Okay, thank you for listening to Ingram Law. As always, we appreciate you being a guest. My website is joeingramlaw.com. My phone number is 205-335-2640. My podcast is called Real Law Alabama, where we discuss criminal law and family law cases throughout the state. My firm handles cases from Huntsville, Birmingham, Montgomery, Mobile, even the Dothan area if you have money. So we have had some wonderful guests the last few weeks. We've had really good feedback, and I'm always in the market to bring people to my listeners that I think add value. And I stumbled upon our guest tonight through LinkedIn, and due to the type of work I handle every day, my criminal cases and divorce cases, I read a little bit about her, and then I went and researched her, and I thought, man, I want to have this lady. She doesn't know why. We have not formally talked before tonight, so this will be a total first-time impression for you and for me. So for our audience, my guest tonight is Angela McCLINTOCK. She has a master's in social work. She is a professional consultant, a trauma therapist, leadership trainer, and we can add to her resume. Yes, we get to add to her resume. She is an award-winning author. She has written a great novel. I have not read the entire thing. I would not lie to my audience. I have read some of it, and she's going to find out tonight why I had her here, because I had a case so similar to this that it's almost scary. So, without further ado, Miss Angela, are you here?
I am here and nice to be here.
All right. Thank you, Angela. I appreciate your time. So, Angela, tell the audience a little bit about you personally, where you grew up, and then tell people a little bit about you professionally.
I was actually born in Mississippi in a small town called Columbia, Mississippi. It's near Hattiesburg. But we moved a lot as I was growing up, and I've lived in many different places. When I came to Alabama, I started college at the University of South Alabama after living in Monroeville for a little while. My grandparents are actually from Monroeville. And so I went to the University of South Alabama and just never left after that.
Okay. And did you graduated from South Alabama?
I did. I graduated from South Alabama with a very marketable degree called creative writing. And I did learn afterwards that unless you're the poet laureate, there's not a lot of jobs for that. And that's why I sort of backed into social work. I have a double minor in psychology and sociology because I've always been interested in how the mind works. But becoming a social worker was an accident that turned out to be the best decision I ever made.
Okay. So you you have a degree from South Alabama. You realized you're not going to be uh, the next novelist of the 21st century. And how and where did you go to get your degree in social work?
Well, roll tide. I got my master's degree at the University of Alabama. I had been practicing social work for several years. As a matter of fact, I did not go back and get my master's until I was 40 years old, which tells you that anybody can go back to school. Once I got my master's, I went further to get licensed. So I am actually currently a licensed independent clinical social worker. And all that means is not only can I do social work, but I can do therapy, I can do diagnoses and things like that.
Um, we'll, we'll get into this a little more, but just based on my experience of 22 years practicing law and the type of clientele I have, um, um, how much uh, clinical session work did you do as a social worker in therapy?
I kind of hear two questions there. Um, in child welfare social work, believe it or not, you do have to make clinical assessments. So I did some clinical work as a social worker. I started as a child abuse investigator in 1987. And I actually started in Mississippi because when I graduated college, Alabama had a hiring freeze. So I would drive the 35 miles to Moss Point and I started there. But I came back to Alabama in 91 and I have done every aspect of child welfare. And I think you really need to have, if not a clinical degree, you have to have an understanding of human behavior. And that's what social worker is. It's not deciding what's wrong with you, it's person in society, like person in your environment. How did your environment shape you? And, I know you're interviewing me, but I bet you see a lot of that as an attorney as well.
Yeah. Um, there's so many ways to go about this. So, am I wrong? And if I am, correct me. Did you work for DHR at one point or the state?
Yes, I started, like I said, at DHS in Mississippi, but in 91, I started with DHR in Alabama in Mobile. And I retired in 2018. At that time, I was the director of the Jefferson County DHR.
Okay. Man, um, the stories that you could tell, um, it, from my perspective, my wife said if I had kept a good book over the last 22 years, you couldn't make up the stories we deal with
Hmm.
in real life. Is that a fair statement?
That is very fair. Matter of fact, today, training new social workers in Illinois as a consultant, I said the very same thing that, the longer you're there, the more stories you have within you.
Yeah. Good and bad, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And really sad stories. It's sad, some stories.
They're very sad. The a lot of people don't understand that first responders, and I include social workers, therapists, psychologists, anyone who listens to someone's trauma day in and day out, it affects them. Causes it can cause secondary trauma within them, but it affects them either way.
All right, so that brings me to a question that I deal with every day. How do you handle what you deal with on a daily basis or did when you were really involved? And not take on your your client's problems or let it affect you or um, you have to keep a line there, a really good boundary. How did you handle that, and how would you encourage young people that do what you do to deal with that?
That is a great question. And the answer to that is it has to be intentional. There is no way. you could stand out in the rain and expect not to get wet. And there's no way that you can continuously take other people's trauma and not be affected. That is why the burnout rate in these professions is so high. The turnover is extremely high across the nation. So, what I try to instill with people when I'm talking to new workers or workers that are experiencing that, the first step is to recognize it. Recognize what you're taking on, and then recognize the symptoms of secondary stress or burnout or compassion fatigue, and be intentional in your own self care plan. Everybody has different motivations that they use to make themselves at peace or relaxed. There's, the therapy things, including staying in the present, doing deep breathing, doing meditation. One really easy, simple stress reliever is walking in nature. For some reason, that brings our cortisol levels down. Another one, my favorite one is laughing. I will surround myself with friends or people that make me laugh because laughing is the biggest stress reliever for me. But everybody has a different trigger and a different way to bring that calmness. And so it has to be intentional. They need to develop a self-care plan.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Um, I'll laugh sometimes, and people will look at me like I'm a crazy man. But I think some of it I do it just to kind of let off steam. You know,
Mhm.
I just have this
Absolutely.
kind of I just have this happy little laugh sometimes throughout the day. And even I had a very stressful meeting this afternoon, and I tried to laugh a little bit in it because if you can't get through it, right?
Right.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about you being a trainer. And second question, what do you think motivates people to do the work that you do day in and day out?
That's a very complex question. Different people are motivated by different things. You know, over 30 years in child welfare alone, I met with so many new workers. I had colleagues, and everybody's motivation was a little bit different. But I'll tell you what motivation helps people to stay in the field, maybe not bring them to the field. And that's to realize that it's a calling for them. When you realize what you're doing is a calling, you can handle more stress. But if you're just doing it because you thought it would be a cool career, I mean, good, try it. But it's a very difficult career, and the ones who stay are the ones that see it as a purpose, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I know this is the easy, obvious thing to say. They're surely not doing it for the money.
No, they are not.
Right? It's kind of like
Right.
teachers. Teachers are not doing it for the money. So,
Absolutely.
social workers are not doing what you do in the trenches for money. I know that. Okay.
One of the one of the things that when I also do some adjunct teaching at UAB in the School of Social Work, and I give that same advice, to students that are looking to go into it. And that is, don't go into it to be rich. Go into it to make a difference.
Yeah, I agree. I never went to law school to make money. The first lawyer I ever worked for, you're going to love this saying, and this is so true, Angela. The people that go to law school make money. Uh, no, wait a minute. The people that go to law school to make a difference actually end up making money. The ones that go to law school to make money usually make a difference. Did I say that right? I'm trying to think. Did that come across what I was trying to say? It's you know um,
I hear you say that if you go to law school to make a difference, people are going to notice that. They're going to come to you and you're going to make money.
yeah,
If you go to it just to make money, then maybe you won't make that much of a difference.
right, right. My theory and my motivation for my what I call my life's work, and I consider it my life's work at 53. I didn't go to school for money. I went to school to make a difference. Now, I have been fortunate based upon my areas, and I think you get better at your areas if you're really devoted, that you become the go-to person or a niche person, and you are rewarded based upon your skill set. That's how I look at it. So,
Yeah, I would agree with that.
yeah, I think that's across the board in anything you do in life. Um, Warren Buffett, the great investor, he says, invest in yourself and you'll be able to trade your skills for anything because you're the go to person in town, whether you're the best doctor, lawyer, banker, chiropractor, dentist, whatever it is, be the best that you can be, and you will be able to trade on that the rest of your life. So that's how I've always looked at it.
Yeah, that's good philosophy.
Thank you. Okay. So now you've left the state. Now you're out on your own and you have a business. So do you have people that work for you, or are you just a hired gun? To tell us a little bit about your career path now.
Well, for about 3 years, I went into private practice and just worked with, I owned my own business, Willow Tree Family Counseling, and I worked with children, teens, and adults who had struggled with either current trauma or childhood trauma. And I really enjoyed doing that. It because of a personal medical issue with my family members, I wasn't able, after 3 years, to give 100% to that. And I didn't think that would be fair to the people I'm working with. So as I transitioned them to other therapists, I went into consulting, which again, I have my own business, Angela McCLINTOCK Consulting, and I work with mainly right now, I'm working with the Child Welfare Policy and Practice Group out of Montgomery,
Hmm.
doing some consulting with them. And I have worked with a couple of other people, but mainly I do consulting for them as well as working on my writing.
Okay, you're pretty busy.
For a retired chick, I am super busy.
Well, it's good to never actually retire. That's my philosophy, but I don't know. Some people can. I don't think I can, Angela. All right. So let me ask you this question because I've always found this to be the case, and I have dealt with a lot of social workers in 22 years. Why are social workers so well read? I mean, I'm dealing with one right now, and every time I talk to him, he tells me, "Joe, go look at this book. Joe, go look at this book." What is the correlation between your skill set and your profession, and why they're so well read? Please tell me.
I don't know that I can answer that. I can tell you why I'm well read. I mean, I've been reading since I was a child. I'm 10 years old. Well, not quite 10, but I'm a little bit older than you. And I remember, in elementary school that you had these different colors of books that you had to progress through, and I'd get through all of them by the end of the year. I've just always loved to read. Um, I'm wondering if A lot of social workers always want to be better, improve, continuous growth. So maybe that's why the ones that you're working with tend to be well read. Because I read not only fiction, but nonfiction. I read Brene Brown, um, you know, leadership books. So I think for me, it's always wanting to stay sharp.
Yeah. Be a lifelong learner, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I
So
said that actually today. The day I stop growing is the day I go home, sit on the couch, and watch soap operas.
yeah, I agree with that. All right, so I know what I was going to ask you. Okay, so coming from working for the state and being a great state employee and all the benefits you have, and now you run your own business. I've done my own business for 22 years. What did you have to learn to run a business that I know you didn't really know as just a state employee? I know that's had to be a gear shift for you.
You know, it's funny that you say that because between DHR and private practice, when I first retired, I was hired at an agency. I don't want to say their name, but they're a for profit agency that works with foster kids as the vice president. And I stayed there almost 3 years. And while I realized that for profit work was not for me, I learned how to do spreadsheets. I learned how to have business plans, how to do strategic planning, how to um, look locate sites and just hire people, and everything that I use now I learned, and it kind of just waxes philosophical with me that even in a job that wasn't for me, I needed that to be where I am now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, I do. One of the things that, well, two of the things that are hardest for me after 22 years is that I am a micromanager. Now I'm getting better because I'm reading a lot of leadership books and I'm stepping back a little bit from the day to day operations of my office and I'm trying to be more hands off. And, if you go hire quality talent um, and give them room, they'll surprise you.
Hmm.
So that's one of the things I'm working on. Is not being a micromanager so much. But at the same time, I'll always be that way because it's my name on the door. You trade
Right.
on your brand name. And so everything at the end of the day is my name, right? Every phone
Absolutely.
call, every email, every letter, every pleading, everything is tied to me. So you're only as good as your last case, and you spend a lifetime building a reputation, and you can lose it in a second. And I've seen it personally happen to one of my best friends.
Hmm.
So that's why I'm that. That's one reason why I'm kind of that way.
No, it's understandable. And you're right. I mean, one of the reasons I went to business for myself and, just enjoy it so much is after years of supervising or managing or directing, hundreds of people, to not have to direct anybody but myself is fantastic.
Yeah. So the good side for you, from what I hear, is that you already had that piece of managing a lot of people. You had that skill set. That's the skill set I'm just now picking up after 22 years. Is I'm responsible for a few more people than I want to be. That's new for me. Yeah, I get
Well,
that.
I started supervision in 1998. and then went in from supervisor to program manager to assistant director to director, and all of that time supervising and managing people and personnel and finances. And, as I said, not having to worry about anybody but myself is very welcome right now at this point of my life.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we've talked a little bit about where you grew up. We've talked about your college. We've talked a little bit about your work background. Talked about running a business. The best part now, and maybe the best part for you, I think, is the next phase that you've written a book. So tell the audience about you and your novel.
Well, I have so many stories inside of me from over 30 years of working with families in crisis. And just I've seen so much trauma, more than most people can imagine. And I've also seen what secondary trauma, as I said, does to frontline workers. So I really wanted for a long time to write a novel that the main character was a social worker, but really showing what a real, true, dedicated, engaging social worker can accomplish working with a family. So I started writing the book, The Boy in the Basement. It is a novel and it's set in Mobile, Alabama. The novel surrounds a child abuse investigation supervisor and her team. And throughout the book, they have to solve or find the answers to several things. One of them is the death of an infant. One is a child that was imprisoned in the basement by a mother who you find out later, you know, was mad with grief. And it also touches, though, on secondary trauma that the main character goes through after learning some tragic news about one of her former clients. So it really just encompasses a snapshot, a peek into the world of what child welfare really is about. Um, and I've just been honestly humbled and amazed at the reviews I've gotten, the feedback I've gotten. Um, I won first prize in psychological thrillers at the 2024 Book Fest conference. And that was amazing. I think all of us
Congratulations.
walk around, thank you. I think all of us walk around with a little imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So when I was told that I won that, I was like, is that a real thing? But it is. So I am currently working on my second novel in the series. Um, I'm really excited about this one because it's called Grave Justice, and it's focusing on another thing that I see all the time, and that's disparity in justice among the classes. So this is girl from the wrong side of tracks accuses, a man of means, and how that whole story plays out. So that's what I'm currently working on right now.
So, for those of us that aren't writers, even though I like to think I can write pretty well every day, how long does it take to write a novel?
That is a very good question. My first novel took over 3 years to write, but it was because I was working, you know, for the state when I started it. And I just didn't devote the time, the brain power that I needed. Now, my second book probably will take a year. And I am working on it every day, but writing is such it's a misnomer. It's you don't just write. You write, you revise, you find a different way to say things, you get stuck, and you write again. So it's kind of a stop and start instead of a constant flow.
Yeah. Um, one of my summer law clerks this semester, Angela, she hates me right now. We were working on a motion last week, and I kept revising paragraph after paragraph after paragraph because I would find something that I wanted to say, and then I would say, well, no, I don't want to say that. I don't want to disclose that at this point. And she was like, "You're so nitpicky," and I was like, "No, this is really important because it's on the record of a criminal trial, and I just don't want to disclose what I know just yet." So writing, even in the legal world,
Mm-hmm.
for me, is very difficult. I mean, it's tedious. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, even before I was an author, we write court reports, we write case notes, we write. So yeah, you're doing writing all of the time, um, and I think the more that you do it, the more that you nitpicky. Let me say it like that. The more that you hone that skill, then the next time it's so much easier. Um, when I was in grad school with and my best friend went to grad school the same year as I did, and we had to write obviously so many papers. And our writing skill was so different. I would write it and then I would put it away and I would come back maybe a few days later and then I'd revise it and I'd be done. She would write it and then she'd rewrite it. She would rewrite it like 8 times, but that was her style. So we all have that style of how we like to revise and put forth our finished product.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I was sitting here thinking. Um, the I'm gonna go ahead and share with the audience why you really caught my attention after I went and looked you up, LinkedIn, looked at your novel, Angela. The plot of your case is sort of similar to a real criminal case I had about 8 years ago. I represented an individual um, that had PTSD from the military and had locked the three children in their bedrooms in literally fences. I mean, they had put fences in the bedroom and they had cameras on them. And one of the children that was taken out of the house was um, malnourished, looked like a Holocaust victim from a Nazi war camp. Was honest to God down to mm, I can't recall Angela, but let's just put it like this: he was skin and bones when they took him to the hospital. And I got that case, and it was really hard for me. You know, I try to separate myself from being a criminal defense lawyer and getting personally involved with my clients. That's one of the questions I get asked every day by my friends. How do you do what you do? They're all guilty. Well, not necessarily. And there's levels of guilt. And so when I read your synopsis, it brought the case back for me, and it was very hard. And it was almost like I was reliving it when I read your your story. Um, but the good thing is that the kids were saved. They got treatment. They're not in the home anymore. And my client, needed some serious help, obviously. And so I want to bring us back to this because this is really important for me, Angela. You know who Dr. Laura is, right?
Yes.
What is your impression of Dr. Laura? Tell the truth. It's okay.
I mean, I really, when I hear people, let's say Dr. Laura or the opposite end of the spectrum, Brene Brown, they all have information that if I can fit it into what I know to be true, then I can accept it. I just try to take everything at face value and then use my own judgment. So I'm not a fan, but I'm not a fan, if that makes sense.
No, no, that's fair. And I'm going to be very frank. My wife loves Dr. Laura. She listens to Dr. Laura on her satellite radio station
Hmm.
before she switched over to satellite. And every time we would take a trip, my wife Holly would put it on Dr. Laura, and it would drive me insane because Dr. Laura would talk to people like they were children and dogs.
You
Really,
know, um,
right?
I could see that. I could see that as well.
Well, that's not your average social worker how they talk to people. The social workers are always non-judgmental. Dr. Laura has an absolute opinion about your damn case, right?
And that's the part that I have the most difficulty with because I want to kind of, if it's okay, go back to what you were talking about with your case and parallel with the book is yes, this child was imprisoned in a basement and denied things, much like in your case. People have come to me and said, that doesn't happen in real life, does it? And I'm like, you would not know how many cases I've had of child imprisonment. But the bottom line is, I'm not going to give my plot away, but just like your dad had PTSD, it's so important. It may not change anything, but if they're going to get better, finding out what was behind that behavior. It wasn't that, in my case, this person, the mom didn't love her son. There was a lot of other things going on. And the same with someone with PTSD, they make decisions that are not always healthy. And I guess the point I really wanted to make with my book is hurt people. And a lot of times it's really easy to judge other people for their actions before you look at where they got to that place. And again, it might not make a difference. You still got to protect children, but it does help their healing if you enter a relationship, a working relationship with them curious instead of judgmental.
Yeah. You, Angela, you're right on where I'm going. You're just getting a little ahead of me here. Just bear with me. I'm an old, slow man, Angela. I'm just I'm leading you where I want to go. You're right there. So, uh, Dr. Laura is good, in my opinion. Now, I actually went and read two of her books, and all of us, you know this. You don't need me to tell you this. You're the expert here. Our childhood determines, for a great part, how we're going to be as an adult. Am I right or wrong?
It says it is very strong influence, especially if you've had an adverse childhood.
Right.
And I know you've probably read the ACE study, but that was a multi-year study on the effects that when you have an adverse childhood event, the things that manifest in adulthood from that. It's a very fascinating study.
Yeah. And after I read Dr. Laura, I've read a lot of other books that my social workers put me onto due to my work. Have you ever heard of the book called "The Body Keeps the Score" by
Absolutely.
by a guy, a Harvard trained psychiatrist, Vander Kolk? Did I say that right?
Vanderkolk. Yes.
Vanderkolk. The Body Keeps the Score is a fascinating read. It's a hard read. It's not a small book, Angela, and it took me about a month to really read it with the kind of precision I wanted to read it. Are you familiar with that?
I love that book. I it really talks to how trauma works, really. And it talks about even when you don't your mind may have repressed trauma, it comes out. It has to come out, and it comes out in other ways. Yes, it's a very good book on trauma.
Yeah, yeah. I've got several clients that need that right now, especially the guy I met with today. I told him he needed to go get in therapy and he needed to read this book for himself. Okay. Well, is there anything else that you want to share with your book that I didn't cover? Because my little few questions does not do it justice because your book has rave reviews online. Is there anything else you want to share about that?
Believe it or not, I do want to say if you are interested in reading the book and you've suffered from any type of um, like child abuse, just be very aware that it could trigger. Like you were talking about, it sounded like you were a little triggered after working that case. So I like to always say, if that's not the kind of book that you want to read, don't read it because I don't want anyone to be triggered. But it is a very honest look at what goes on with children and families, and it's an honest look about that every action usually has a precursor. And, also the fact that social workers, therapists, even teachers can have secondary trauma depending on the types of work that they do. So I just wanted to bring that out to the public to understand. It's real easy to point at social workers and, you know, they're displayed in the media sometimes as being uncaring. And really, the ones that I've dealt with, that can be furthest from the truth. So I hope the book will shed some light on that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Thank you for saying that. Because it's important to self care and not to.
Absolutely.
But I think, honestly, this kind of conversation we have is a very highbrow conversation for professionals. I don't think the average person is going to appreciate the kind of conversation we just had because we both have a skill set and relationship in what we do that most people would never see or comprehend, you know?
No,
So,
you're right.
yeah. Okay. So now we get to deviate. Angela, this is the best part. This is the best part. I always love this part. This is what we call the lightning round.
Okay.
Okay. Um, you have no idea what we're going to talk about. You have no idea
None.
what.
I'm a little
No,
afraid.
no, Angela. Angela, I told you in the email. There are no gotcha questions. I never put you in a bad position. This is so my audience gets to know you and humanize you as a person because you are much more intelligent than I am based on the conversation we've had. Okay. First question is always the easiest. I always love this question because I am a history nerd. I love biographies. I have a master's in history and political science. Um, what is the most famous dead person that you would either A, want to interview, or B, have dinner with?
I really should say something profound like Aristotle or Benjamin Franklin or Gandhi. But, I would like to interview Harper Lee. Um, To Kill a Mockingbird is my favorite book, but I've always had this conspiracy theory in the back of my mind that if Truman Capote didn't write it, that then he helped her an awful lot. So I would like to sit down and interview her and just talk to her about that.
Okay. Interesting. I never thought about that. Um, do you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
I am an extrovert's extrovert.
Really?
I love I love talking to people face to face. And I guess the real truth of extrovert or introvert is where do you get your energy?
Right.
So I get a lot of energy like when I'm in front of an audience or, at a party with people I know, I can just, I talk to strangers in the Walmart line, much to the chagrin of my daughter. But I also need, after all of that, I do need some time to regroup before the next, big shine.
Yeah. Have you ever taken the I know you have based upon what you do and interviewing people. Are you big on these uh, different tests you can take on personalities? They call it like a INGH.
Mm.
What
Myers-Briggs.
Myers Briggs. So what's your philosophy on that, real quick?
Um, Another interesting thing, I am an ENFJ.
Mm,
When I first started as a social worker, before I ever did supervision or anything, I was an ENFP. But it shows that your personality can change when your circumstances change. So basically, E is extrovert, obviously.
right.
The N is intuitive. It means that instead of thinking point A to point B to point C to point D, I do point A. Wow, what about A1? And let's look at if that happens, maybe we'll do A2. So kind of that branch thinking. And then the F is feeling. That makes sense. And the J is called judgment, but it's really has nothing to do with judgment. It has to do with organization. And the more I had to be in a leadership, the more my personality embraced organization.
We are totally opposite. And
Are you an ISTP?
I think I'm a IL mm, J something. I don't know. I'm a very introverted person. When I walk in the courtroom, I
Mhm.
have a totally different presence. How I do that, I don't know. But I am the most introverted person you'll ever meet.
And yet you do a podcast. But I guess because you're on the, microphone, not face to face.
Yeah. Well, the reason I don't do the uh, the reason it's audio as opposed to visual is because I don't like to see my fat face on a screen. That's the only reason I don't go visual yet. Now I've lost 40 pounds, and I'm a marathon runner, but
Nice.
I'm very self critiquing about my face. When I do Zoom calls, so
Oh,
that's
yeah.
why I don't. That's why I don't do them. Okay. All right. Lightning round. Let's stick to this lightning round. What would you change about yourself if you could?
How is that a lightning question? I mean, that is a deep philosophical question. Let's see.
No, it's not. No, 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 no. These are just quick answers. What could you change about yourself if you could?
Believe it or not, at 62, I don't have a thing I want to change. If you'd have asked me that 10 years ago or 20 years ago, I'd have a list. I think part of getting my age is just being happy with who you are.
Good for you. Good. You're a very healthy, mentally healthy person. Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm also old.
No, 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 no. What is something that that is surprising that you've learned about yourself over the years?
We need to have a talk about what lightning means.
Oh,
Something surprising I've learned about myself over the years. Maybe it, I would say that I could be so happy not having a lot of people that I direct. I mean, I love leadership, but I am surprised to embrace being my own person with not having to look after anybody. I've learned to embrace that, and I think that surprises me. I thought I'd always be a director or a vice president or something.
hmm. Okay. All right. Easy question. Are you a beer drinker or are you a wine person?
Neither. Um, I because I'm diabetic, I don't drink at all. When I want to cheat, I will eat chocolate cake. Um, so no, I just don't drink because I don't want to waste those cheat points on alcohol.
Okay, that's fair enough. We haven't met, so I didn't know what you were going to say. Um,
When I will tell you that before I was diabetic, I preferred liquor drinks, like not beer or wine, but like, oh, this is gonna date me. Jack and Coke or Cuba Libre.
Jack and Coke. Okay. All right. That says a lot about you. What are you proudest of in your life?
Now y'all are gonna get sappy because I'm going to say I've been thinking about this a lot and I didn't know you'd ask me, but I am proudest of how my daughter has turned out. I have a 30-year-old daughter, and just like anyone, the teenage years were crazy. But recently, as I said, there's been a lot of tragedy in my family, and watching her step up to the plate and be just an integral part of healing and running and doing what needs to be done, no matter how it affected her, has just made me immensely proud. And that may sound gushy, but I actually think about that all the time lately.
Yeah, that's part of your legacy, right?
Somebody was telling me that today. They were like, "Well, she's just like you." I'm like, "Poor kid."
Oh, I imagine I would presume and know that you are a great mother. There's no doubt. Okay.
Well, if you'd have asked her
Um,
that at 16, she would have disagreed with you.
okay. What do you like, comedy movies or do you like dramas?
I like dramas.
I think
I
that
like
would fit.
thrillers.
Do you?
I like to try to figure out what's going to happen before the end of the movie. I'll never shed that investigator in me.
Okay. All right. Um,
Oh, another really fun fact that people don't believe when they see me is I'm a huge Marvel fan. I have seen every of the original, Avengers out there. So
what do you think about that? What's your philosophy on that?
I really think if I'm gonna get philosophical about it, other than, you know, just exciting and fast paced, is I really do think it's because I always want to believe that good will triumph over evil, even though I'm not naive and I know that doesn't happen all of the time. But just I think people go to see those movies to suspend the stress of all the negativity and horrible things, and they want to watch for 2 hours people face impossible odds and win. And I think that's why I like them.
Okay. All right. Well, we got through the hard part, Angela. We did it.
We did
Did you
it.
have
Yay.
Did you have fun?
I had fun. Are
Okay,
you
good.
shaking your head going, oh my gosh?
No, no, this is the best part of my week. I told you, this is the best hour of my week that I have. No matter what I do, I love this Thursday night conversation.
No, I'm glad.
All right. Okay. So we had Miss Angela McCLINTOCK as our guest tonight. She was very insightful. She was very gracious with her time. She is very, very smart lady. She has enlightened me tremendously. And if you have a chance, and if you don't want to be trigger emotions for you, you might want to read the book, The Boy in the Basement. It's a very good read. And Angela, we appreciate your time tonight, and it's always been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a great fun. Thanks for having me.
All right. So this is Ingram Law, joeingramlaw.com. My phone number is 205-335-2640. This podcast is called Real Law Alabama, where we discuss family law and criminal law cases throughout the state of Alabama. My office handles cases from Huntsville, Birmingham, Montgomery, Mobile, and even Dothan if you'll really pay me. As always, we do appreciate your comments and questions off the air. Those are confidential. We'll get back to you. As we always say, take care of yourself and each other, and have a good night.
No representation is made that the quality of the legal services to be performed is greater than the quality of legal services performed by other lawyers.